3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so first let's change from lit PBR to matte cap. So we're going to tap this little sun here and change from lit PBR to matte cap. I'm using PXG clay. If yours is different, just tap this and find PXG clay. Let's tap this little image here and we'll import the reference image. So we'll tap here. You can tap on whatever image is there, import, photos, and then find your photo, tap it, and then tap add, and then it'll show up here. If you want to move it around, just hit transform, and then you can move your image around and you can resize it. So let's make our sphere a little smaller, and let's hit validate if it's not already validated. So now we're just going to use the move tool. We'll make it really big, and we're just going to make this curved shape right here. So literally just pull it, pushing and pulling, until you get something similar to what I have down there. Okay, so we'll kind of make it a little thicker here towards the bottom. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So next we'll turn it on its side. Or actually we're looking at the back of it, this is the top of it. So just rotate it, and you just want to make it a little bit thicker. You can make this a little smaller, so we'll just pull out the sides a bit, especially towards the bottom, just so it has some width. And the top doesn't really have to be that thick, so we can make that a little smaller on the top. And you can make this as dramatic or not as you want, but I think I like something like this. I think that looks good. You see that it's sort of like just facing down. So just hit right, take your gizmo, and then just rotate it like this. Okay, so when you hit right and left, it's mostly facing forward. So let's go ahead and rename this piece. So just tap on the scene menu here, go to sphere, tap on the little 3 dots, and name, and we'll just name this horn main. So now let's add another sphere. Just tap the little hidden gizmo there, and we're just going to move it down and forward. Let's take this little green node and flatten it. Okay, we'll maybe stretch it a little bit more. Okay, and then we'll just validate it. So we're going to make this little curved horn piece. So let's just take move and then push it down from the middle. Take this part and push it up and then push it down. So we're just going to repeat that process. See, it's a little thick, so you can take your gizmo and you can just make it a little more thin. So you just want to make a nice curved piece. I'll make my move tool a little bit smaller, pull out the bottom part a little bit more. See that curve, but it's not really curved up enough. So there's a few things you can do. You can rotate it until you get that top part where you like it, and then you can take move, and then you can manipulate the bottom part to get what you need. So it's a lot of push and pull, and I really enjoy this part of sculpting because it's just fun. It's legit just sculpting, which is Nomad Sculpt's, I would say, its primary advantage. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I still want it a little more round. So just remember to take move and really just manipulate the clay until it's nice and round and you get a nice shape like this. So I think that looks pretty good. So the next thing we'll do is place this. So we're going to move it on one side. So let's take the gizmo and just move it over. Make it smaller. Let's move it up. And we really need this to flow into this piece. Let's move it up. Looks like they're about even. So move that up a little bit, maybe make it a little smaller. And now let's take move and let's drag this piece to this. Okay, Okay, so we'll take this and we'll kind of drag it. We want to keep that nice shape here. So we're just molding this into that. Okay, it looks great. I want to bend it a little bit in this direction, so I actually have to change the symmetry. I'm just going to turn it off, and then when I push, it'll sort of bend in one direction. So let's take Gizmo and move it over a little bit more. Maybe move it in a little bit more. So something like this. Let's take a look from the front. And let's rotate it a little bit just so it's kind of coming off to one side. So maybe something like that I think is pretty good. And now we'll just add a mirror and we'll duplicate this side. So we'll go to the sphere and we'll add a mirror, add mirror. So now we have these two pieces in the front. They look great. You can choose to rotate them a little bit more if you want, put them a little bit further together. But I think that looks really, really nice. Okay, so I think that looks good for the front part. So now let's make the little butt shell, which is little wings curled over. Okay, so now let's add the back part. So we'll just add a sphere. Let's move it out of this mirror. So just long press and move it up. We'll use our gizmo and we'll just move it back, make it a bit bigger. And here's another place where you can be creative. You can make it as big or as small as you want. I think this is a good size. I'm going to stretch it a little bit this way with that blue node. So we have something like this. And now let's mirror it. So we mirrored it, so we have to just pull it off to the side, and you see that you have the two creases there. So I want the back to be more round. I don't want it to be quite as butt-like. So I'm just going to rotate. And you see when I rotate, it makes that a little bit more flat. So we can validate those two shapes and then use move. And then you can adjust this to make it a little nicer up here as well. I'll make the move tool a little bit bigger. So maybe you want it a little bit thinner, like so. So I think that looks pretty good. This is nice and round, and I think that's a good size. So next we're going to put this little part of a middle shell up here. I don't know if they actually have that, but I like it. So I'm just going to add another sphere. We'll use the gizmo and we're going to move it back. And really it's going to sit something like this. So you can adjust the size, you can flatten it, you can make it any way that you want. But I think that looks kind of good. I just want it nice and subtle. Maybe not even curving so much. I'll just stretch it this way a little bit. So now there's just a little middle part of the shell there. So now let's take the back part of the shell and we'll make it a little bit more dome-like, and we'll get rid of this bottom, part. So let's make sure that we're on this sphere, and let's go ahead and name this. We'll rename it back shell. Let's rename this mirror as well. We can just name it shell. And I guess we can keep this here. We'll just do shell little. And let's make sure that we're saving often, because Nomad does like a good crash. But we're doing great so far. So now that we have this piece, let's go ahead and use select mask, and we're going to use rectangle. So then we're going to make a rectangle, and we'll put pretty much here. I think that's a good spot. That might be a little, oh no, I think that's pretty good. So now let's take Gizmo and we're going to use the green node, and we're just going to go like this, make it a little, can move it up a bit. Okay, so I don't want the bottom to be that super flat, but just flat a little bit. So now we'll use this orange ring to make it a little bit bigger. That'll just give it a little bit extra shape, make it look nice and fun. And then we'll hit select mask and hit clear all. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So now let's take the back shell and let's just voxel remesh it. So we voxel remesh it at 155. Let's just take smooth, and we'll go ahead and just smooth it out, just so it's a little nicer. Okay, so now it's smooth. It looks good. Okay, so now let's add some more spheres, and we're going to use these for several parts of the face and little mandible type shell things. So let's add another sphere, and let's move everything out of this main mirror. So we'll put it up there. So we'll use our gizmo. There we go. We'll move this back and we'll move it down. You can put it up a little bit. So maybe something like that is pretty good. So we're going to take this sphere and we can go ahead and validate it. Let's clone it and move one back. We'll make it a little bit smaller, just in case we need that later. Let's clone that one. So now we're looking at the bottom. Let's move this up and over. And this is going to be just the top part of our front leg. So we want to move it under the shell, maybe a little bit smaller, and let's flatten it. So we'll flatten it this way. Okay, I think that looks great. And I'm going to add another sphere. So now we're going to take this sphere and we're going to put it in that exact position right underneath. We'll make it small. So now we're going to stretch it down this way and move it down so it's kind of right underneath like that. We can go ahead and validate it. And now we're going to take move, and we want to put a bend in it. So let's take the bottom part, and we want this leg to kind of be coming down and then sort of flare out a little bit at the bottom. So we're going to pull this part at the bottom. But when we pull that part, we also want this back part to come down. So I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to make sure that this back part is coming down so we get a nice shape like that. You can make it a little bit wider if you want from the front view. I'll make my move tool a little bit bigger. So now I want to just kind of smooth. I want to push this part back a little bit and just kind of repeat the process. Make it a little bit smaller. And I'm just making the top a little bit thinner than the bottom. So let's take the gizmo. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and then I'm going to move it up. I'm going to rotate it a little bit. I'm actually going to make the bottom a little flatter because I'm looking at my sample one, and I actually have his legs a little flatter, which I like. And I'm just going to make it shorter. So now what we'll do is this will be leg, and then we'll find a little piece, and this will be leg base. So now we have leg and leg base. So let's take both of these and let's clone them. And we can move them over, and then we can make the other legs. So just use your gizmo and just move it to the edge of the shell, and then you can rotate it. So we'll clone that again. Move it over, rotate. And I want this to be a little bit more in the back. So this will be great for like a 3D print, because it's very sturdy. There's lots of points where we'll hit the ground, and we'll trim the bottom so that it's nice and flat. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. I didn't make sure I was in orthographic. You always want to be in orthographic when you're sculpting. So now we have all these legs. Let's see, leg. And then we have all these leg bases. So we'll select them all, add a mirror, and then they show up on the other side. Okay, so now let's take this sphere, and this will be, let's make this the face. So we'll just rename that one face. We'll clone it. Let's move it down and forward. And let's move it off to one side. So this is going to be like the bottom little parts of the shell. So I'll just stretch it and kind of place it how I want it to go a little bit. And then we'll use move. So I'm just to note, I'm not adding the mirror. I could add it now, but it gets a little tricky when you're working on two at once. So that's why I'm just doing the one side, and then I'll just mirror it. So let's use move, and we're going to try to make this into like a nice little point. I think I'm going to turn symmetry off. That way I can just sort of work freely. So let's look at the side view, because sometimes it can get a little tricky. And let's make this side view first exactly how we want it. So I think that looks pretty good. And notice I'm just push and pulling on the back part so it'll get nice and flat. Okay, I think that looks pretty nice. I also don't think the head is wide enough, so I'm just going to take the head part and just make it a little bit wider down here. Okay, I think that looks good. So now we're going to take this back part, which is this neck. Let's take our gizmo. So this is behind the face, and we're just going to make it a little bit bigger. We can stretch it this way. Let's push it up a bit. And now let's just take move and just stretch that part out so it touches the mandibles and the upper part of the head. So we're just going to stretch that down. We'll stretch it a little bit further down here. Okay, that looks good. Can push it up a bit. Doesn't have to be so rounded on the bottom. So something like that, just so it looks like it's part of the shell and it connects to those little side, these little side things. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's take our gizmo and we don't need a line. Let's just hit right and let's make this smaller. Okay, we'll push it back and maybe even take this green node and just make it a little flatter. So let's also tilt it a little bit. We can rotate it this way just so it's sort of kind of cupping, kind of framing the face. So I think that looks great. I'm going to take move. I'll take this end and just kind of pull it. And I'll take this and then I'll sort of meet it there. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Might have to make it a little bit smaller, but we'll see. So now let's take this piece. So this is the under, we'll just name it under horn. And we want to add a mirror. So we'll add a mirror. Okay, that looks great. Let's take the face and use our gizmo and just open it up a little bit, so we'll make it a little wider. We can actually move it up a little bit too, if you want, or you can just make it a little bit bigger. So let's take the drag tool, and on this we're gonna just pull this. If that ever happens, just turn off stroke painting. So we'll take the drag tool and we're gonna drag it up. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And we're just gonna drag up here. And maybe give it that a little push. So now we'll take this, which is the face, let's clone it, and let's rename it eyes. I'll do a quick save. So we'll go back to eyes now, we'll hit gizmo, and we'll just move it over and shrink. Okay, so now we have some eyes, so we just have to figure out how we want them. Let's stretch them this way. Let's rotate them a bit down. You know, you can adjust the shape as needed, but I think a little something like that. Okay, I kind of like that. I might take the face too. You can use the move tool, and you can actually make the face a little wider. I think that might look a little nicer design-wise. Take the eyes, tilt, and maybe move them up a little bit. Oh yeah, I kind of like that. Okay, so now let's add some pupils. So we'll add another sphere, and I'm just going to name this P1. And we can go ahead and mirror it. And let's actually name the mirror P1. And then let's tap this. We can validate them. And then we'll use gizmo. We'll move it down, over, and go ahead and shrink it. And we're going to move those directly into the eyes. Okay, I like that. We also need to mirror this other eye. So let's make sure that we go to this eye and then we add a mirror. I'm going to rename the mirror eye whites. And I do see here that this horn actually looks kind of nice where it is in the thing. So I'm just going to rotate this a little bit and then I'll just sort of move it in that direction. don't think I did this in the other one, but it's kind of nice to just bring that off, give it a little bit of a, give it a little flavor there. You can maybe tilt it towards the front if you want. But don't ever be afraid to kind of give the parts a little flavor. Nothing wrong with that. And there is, of course, extra credit. If you want to do like eyelashes, like I always do in my characters, you can use a tube, use path, and then make one long line, and then tap in the middle. You might have to tap a few times. So you go like this. So you make that into whatever shape you want. I'm gonna add a little flare to the end, so I add another little node, pull that off, tap radius twice, so you have all these orange nodes, and then you can just adjust these and make them, you know, really cute. But it's just something that I like to do for all my characters. You'll always see my characters with eyelashes. And just know that when you're done and you want this to actually go into the other meshes, you have to take it off snap. Snap will cause it to stay on the surface. But when you don't have snap on, then it will allow it to kind of curve into the surface, which is what you want. So I'll make this really small, make this really small, and just kind of make it look like it seamlessly blends in to the middle. Okay, there we go. Don't forget to hit mirror, and then you can validate. And there's also another cool little trick you can do. You can hit profile, and that will give you a more flatter feel, which might actually look nice for this type of character. And if it's not the perfect angle that you want it, just hit twist, and then you can twist it with this little pink thing. You can kind of twist it to get it exactly how you want it. Like, I think that looks amazing. So I'm gonna go with that one, so I'll validate it. Okay, and last but not least, we'll just finish it off with a little mouth and some teeth. So let's go ahead and add a sphere. Let's move it all the way up to the top. Okay, so we'll go ahead and validate it. So now let's just move it down. We'll shrink it, flatten it, and now you just have to figure out where you want the mouth. So maybe, let's say we want it maybe kind of low, so maybe something like this. So let's also stretch it, so maybe we want the mouth a little bit wider. So what we're going to do is use this shape to cut into this sphere. So the face sphere, this face, let's go ahead and we want to change the vertice count of it. We want to make it a little more dense. So let's just tap on here, multi-res, and we'll just subdivide it. So that way it's a little bit stronger. So we're going to take this part and cut this shape from the face. But first, before I do that, I think I'm going to use clay, and I'm going to go to the face, and I just want to add a little bit of clay to the bottom, so it's almost like a chin or something like that. So now I'm just going to hit smooth and just kind of smooth that out, just so that there's a little something there for the bottom part of the mouth. But just really simple detail. So next we're going to take, let's see, where is this? So let's label this. This is going to be, let's put MX. So X is going to be the one that we cut. Let's clone it, and let's change this name to teeth. Okay, so now we have the teeth, which we're going to hide. So let's take mouth X, we're going to take face. So now they're both selected. If for some reason you can't hide, so we're going to hide MX. If you can't just hide that and you have an issue, just go down here to advanced and uncheck sync visibility. If you uncheck that, you should be able to just hide one or the other. So you want to make sure that you hide MX. We have face and MX both selected, but MX is hidden. So now we're just going to go to Boolean and Boolean. Okay, so then you have something like this. Now, if other parts show, then you can probably just hit clay and hit sub and just kind of go over it with sub. It's just going to take the clay away from those other shapes. Let's go ahead and voxel remesh the face. So we'll just hit voxel 158. And now let's just take smooth and smooth out the mouth a bit. And now is also a good time if you want to do any little adjustments like to the mouth. Maybe you want to like pull this part out a little bit in the center and just give his little mouth profile a little more definition. You can do that. Let's see, where's the teeth? So we'll go to teeth, we'll use our gizmo, and we'll rotate it forward. We'll make it smaller. Okay, we'll kind of put it up into the face area. And then we can just take this and add a mirror to tap on the actual teeth again. You don't want to be on the mirror. And you can just separate these two. And then he has two little teeth. I'm going to rotate it so it's a little more in line with. And you can clone. You can clone if you want him to have other little teeth. Little baby fangs. But that's how easy it is to make. This will be a great simple thing to 3D print. And if I was going to 3D print it, all I would do is take everything and I would join it together. So then you have one piece. The problem with one piece is if you're going to print, then it might have some sockets inside where resin can get kind of filled up. If I printed this hollow, I would make sure to put a drain hole on the bottom, and I would just punch it up there, and I would make sure that it ended somewhere up here. So that way all the resin in there could drain out. I would do the same thing, maybe make one or two, or maybe just like one big hole in the middle so that all of this resin could drain out. Or you can just print it solid, which is kind of nice because then you have that nice weight to go with it as well. So that's my recommendation. If you're going to print it hollow, make sure you have drain holes or else resin will get stuck inside your print. But I think that's pretty much it. Now you have your little beetle that will be good for printing, and I hope you enjoyed this little quick tutorial. Keep drawing, keep sculpting. I'll see you all in the next video.
Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to go more in depth, then definitely check out my Skillshare classes where I am a top teacher. I have about 50 classes, both Procreate and Nomad Sculpt. I also have a few classes on Udemy, so if you want to learn more, or you just like my style, you like the way I teach, you want to support me, those are some other places that you can do it. Thanks again, keep drawing, keep sculpting. I'll see you all in the next video.